Okay, so we have said that the project management methodology we are going to be using to drive this project is the SAP S/4HANA Activate methodology. Now, like I've said also, we can use this methodology to drive other IT projects, but this methodology is specific to SAP. This is theirs. And also, it's also worthy to note that this is also an agile methodology. So it's not adopting exactly what we have seen in the agile methodology we saw when I presented initially, but this is its own structure. So every IT structure, every system, or every major player within the IT space has a methodology they use to drive their projects. So as a BA, it's important you know that methodology because you'll be required to support the project manager in implementing and adopting that methodology and executing the project with that methodology. So it's very, very important. So, so basically, the aim of this session is for us to know what this methodology is because it's part of, like I've said that at this point we have gotten into the project. This methodology would be used, right? So we need to understand what it is. How do we use this to implement flex tubes, flex tubes project? Yeah, and also when you have conversations out here and you say you have been part of a project, it's very, very worthy to mention the methodology you guys use to drive your project. So part of, of course, you have interviews and you come towards the project space. Oh, I was part of the project. And in the project, after the project charter, we adopted the SAP S/4HANA Activate methodology. We also have another methodology we call the ASAP methodology, related SAP. But that is for the old system we used to use. But the current SAP now, which is a newer version within the S/4HANA family, uses what we call SAP S/4HANA Activate methodology. If you go to Microsoft Dynamics, they have their own methodology. If you go to Oracle, Oracle has its own methodology. So the idea, but all these methodology are under the agile framework. They are not under traditional approach. That's one thing you need to take note of as we move. Now, if you look at the Activate methodology, we have different work streams. We have what we call the discovery phase. We have the project management requirement. We have the solution validation. We have workshops that will be done. We have design and configuration, testing,
Sorry,
training, data management.
for stopping. I'm not seeing your slide.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, but I was thinking
I'm not
it's
seeing your slide.
intentional.
Yeah.
You are not seeing my slides.
Yes, your slide has not been up. Just our name showing
You
here.
guys would have called my attention to
I
that.
thought it was intentional. Now we can see.
So don't think, don't be thinking, ask. Just ask. Okay, okay. So I was just basically explaining the aim of the session. Sorry, I wasn't sharing that. For the Activate methodology work streams, these are the key areas we're going to be looking at. So if you have been in an SAP S/4HANA project, you will be involved in some of these work streams. The first is the discovery phase, which is with the phase we just finished now, the pre-project phase. You see it a lot of what happens in the discovery phase is to expose the users or the business to what SAP offers. So around understanding, signing off the project, identifying those who are going to be involved, playing around with the system, then making payments once the payment is made for the system, and of course they will give you what we call something like a sandbox for you to start playing around, and of course some assessments. We're going to see all that as we move on. So these are key work streams, key activities that happen within the Activate phase. So there'll be project management work, there'll be a solution validation session, there'll be workshops, there'll be design and configurations, testing, training, data management, integration, operations, and support. So, my friends, if you say you've been in an IT project or SAP project, you should be mentioning these work streams. So it goes like this. When I was part of a project, I was involved in the most of the pre-project job around the discovery phase. I was also part of the project management activities. I supported the solution validation. I managed the fit to standard workshops. I supported with design and configuration. I supported with testing, training, data management, integration, operations, and support. So in your conversations, you need to pick these streams. It's very, very important. And the essence of this class is to now expose us to these work streams. There are different activities that happen within these work streams. But this is like an end-to-end core work streams that you can use to drive your project plan. So I can, if I'm designing a project plan, I can decide to use this work stream as to break down my project. We're going to see that as we go. Or I can decide to use the Activate methodology, which we are going to be looking at very soon. But in most projects, we use the Activate methodology anyways. So these are work streams and core activities that will happen when you get involved, when the project starts. So from the beginning, the BA will be in all these phases. The functional consultants will come most time in the design and configuration or in the workshop phase, but the BA will be in all these phases. That's why the job of a BA is always very, very demanding. All these work streams, anyways, not phases, work streams. Now, let's look at the deployment options. So FlexTube has decided, so they're still having conversations around using SAP S4HANA. And they ask the question, how will this system be deployed? Okay, let's say, for example, we want to use SAP S4HANA. What are the deployment options? So deployment options basically talks about how will the system come to life within the business or the environment. First deployment option we have in SAP S4HANA is on-premise. So will the server of the SAP be sitting in a physical location somewhere in the business? You see, all these are questions that will follow to determine the project management approach. But you need to have all this information before you start running into coming up with a project plan. You need to understand the deployment approach. Are we going to be deploying SAP S4HANA on premise? If you look at the business case for FlexTube, there was no mention around cloud, right? So we might need to assume that in this 21st century, you want your information to be sitting in the cloud. Which kind of cloud? Are you going to be using a private cloud? You can see the futures of all these options. So if it's SAP S4HANA, I'll also show you how the system looks like. Hopefully, before we end the class, I will just show you, how the look and feel of what SAP S4HANA looks like as a software, or as an ERP. So if we're going to be using private cloud, what do we expect? What are we going to be expecting from this cloud? So of course, full scope, all industry solutions, configure and extend, SAP infrastructure, yearly innovation cycle. All these are features that we're going to get if we go using SAP, if we use the private cloud edition or public cloud. Public cloud is more for large and government parastatals, so it's a much more larger platform. So one of the decisions that the stakeholders need to make, and you guys need to also note, is that which option are we going to be using? So the assumption is that we are going to be using the SAP S4HANA Private Cloud Edition. So one thing to note in your conversation is the deployment option we're going to be using. So we hopefully would be using the private cloud, which is for enterprise. So enterprise, SAP S/4HANA enterprise cloud solution. So if you're coming to the SAP space, you need to understand the deployment options that we use in SAP S/4HANA or SAP. So you can have the system get installed in a physical location. The server is sitting in a physical location, which is what used to be, but we're in the era of cloud solutions. So is either they have the server sitting somewhere in the physical location or it's sitting in the cloud, but we have different cloud options. We're going to be so one thing you have learned today is SAP, for example, has different work streams, number one. Number two, SAP has different deployment options. You can do on-premise, you can do private cloud or public cloud. So if they ask you in interviews, which deployment option did you use? Is it on-premise? Is it private cloud or is it public cloud? When they call deployment option, you should now know that what they're asking is this option. So you probably say it was a private cloud edition. Very, very important. Sorry, just a second. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Yeah, so the next thing is, so take note of deployment options. It might also come out in your next interview, the different deployment options we have. Number two is, okay, of course, explaining the deployment options. When you have the time, you can read through them, but the private cloud, we've talked about on-premise, we've talked about private cloud, we've talked about public cloud, but cloud, definitely, SAP S/4HANA Cloud is what we call software as a service. And basically, it's um, so software as a service, designed for in-memory. I don't want to bore you with a lot of the details. I'll just summarize, right? If you look at, SAP S/4HANA Cloud in a shared public cloud hosted and operated by SAP, there are two options. When you look at cloud, it might be a shared service. That means there might be a cloud option where different customers can be sitting on that same platform. We call that Rise with SAP. Rise is like a smaller platform for smaller customers who want to actually move to the cloud. It's like a product of SAP, right? And we have, private cloud in the sense that you're not going to be sharing any public servers with anybody. You're going to be having your own private server. So these are different. I don't want to bore you with those details. Just know that we have three different deployment options. So when you get this, you can go through this. Now there are two in the cloud space. There are two different services or products we have. One is called Rise with SAP. The other one is called Grow with SAP. So just see that it's just like a variety. For example, if you have a bottled water, you have 50 cl and 75 cl. Just the same bottled water, but different, kind of products. Or we have, for example, again, the same iPhone, but iPhone 16 Pro, iPhone 16 this, iPhone 15 this, the same iPhone, but different products with different features. That's also what we have in SAP S/4HANA Cloud. For the cloud, we have Rise. Rise is also a product, and Grow is also a product of SAP S/4HANA. I'm giving you this terminology so that when you hear them, within the SAP space, you're not thrown into confusion, but you might need to play this video again, take your notes, and start understanding these terminologies. Now, there is something that's happening that is hopefully will happen in 2027 within the SAP family, is that we have a current version called ECC, and it's expected that by 2027, customers sitting on this ECC platform will need to move to the new version, of course, we call SAP S/4HANA. So currently, people are still on the ECC version of SAP. we have a new version called S4HANA that came, I think, in 2005 or 15. I don't know. But um, it's requested that clients should move from that ECC old version to S4HANA. But basically, people are still in the old version, and we have a new version. But hopefully by 2027, it's expected that people should move. And that change is driving a lot of jobs within the SAP space. And for that movement to happen, you need BAs, you need project managers. So that's why there are a lot of job opportunities within the SAP industry right now, because millions of customers are still in the ECC platform and there is a deadline. So gradually people are moving. So if you go online, you see a lot of SAP projects. This is what is triggering. This is one of the reasons why people we have a lot of projects in SAP, because people are trying to move from the old one to the new one, to the new system. So just also have that as a preliminary information about SAP. I also sent you a video. I hope you had time to watch it. If you watch that video, you should have understood basic introduction of what SAP is. That's why I'm not going through it now again. Um, so those two products, Rise and Grow, when you have your time, please just go through it. I'm not going to be spending too much on this. I'm not advertising SAP or that product. So this is something you're going to be reading for your own use. The most important thing is we are going to be using the private cloud edition, which is under the Rise with SAP product. So if you look at this structure, for example, the ERP name is SAP S4HANA. The enablement journey, we have two: Grow with SAP and Rise with SAP. The cloud products, we have SAP S4HANA Cloud under Grow. We have SAP S4HANA Cloud Private. We have SAP S4HANA Public Cloud under Grow. We have SAP S4HANA Private Cloud under Rise. And we also have SAP S4HANA Public Cloud under Rise. The SAP S4HANA, S4HANA Public Cloud, the implementation method is Greenfield only. We're going to learn what Greenfield and Brownfield is when we come into the IT space. For SAP S4HANA Private Cloud, we have Greenfield and Brownfield. Then the SAP S4HANA Public Cloud, we have two-tier ERP scenarios. The same thing. It could be Greenfield or Brownfield also. So this is what you just need to understand that. And that's why as a BA, you need to understand the system. Remember when we're talking about some of the activities of the BA, why I'm taking my time to take you through this is why I actually sent you a video for you to go through is to give you a basic understanding of what the system is. Remember that one of the job of a BA is understand process, understand systems, and of course, understand people. Why we're doing this is to introduce you to the system first. And you need to understand the system, you need to understand the deployment approach, you need to understand the implementation method, you need to understand the product. So these are things you need to get familiar with, because if you have worked in SAP, you should at least understand what product you used, what implementation method you used. So for the product, that's why I didn't want to mention the focus on the enablement journey. Sometimes you will hear, is it Rise? If it's Rise, fine. What cloud product did you use? SAP S4HANA Private Cloud. What implementation method did you use? Was it Greenfield or Brownfield? These are terminologies you need to understand as a BA. Very, very important. So I won't go. So you can see the difference between two of them. Grow with SAP is normally used by small to medium-sized industries. Rise with SAP is used by large enterprises. This is people who are new to SAP. These are existing SAP customers who are migrating to the cloud. This is hosted by SAP. This is hosted by SAP or other hyperscalers. Standard best practices customizable. So these are the two major enablement journeys we have in SAP, and this is the difference. So why are we using private cloud? We're using private cloud because FlexTube is a fairly large organization with branches in 5 countries with almost 3,000 employees. So it's a large enterprise. And while inside, so we have established that Rise is the best option. So what I'm doing now is what the SAP consultants will be doing to the directors or the stakeholders, just explaining what SAP is, explaining the products they have, explaining the deployment option they are going to be using, and every other thing. So at this point, the stakeholders, the directors who had skepticism about the product will now start understanding what SAP is. So they'll say, okay, now, okay, yeah. So one thing first, this is a cloud solution. Yes. So we're no longer going to be doing stuff, having a server sitting in one location. Very good. Number two is, what is the cloud name? They know now this is SAP S/4HANA Cloud. Perfect. They'll say, how do we start the journey? SAP will tell them we have two enablement journeys. One is grow with SAP, two is rise with SAP. And I believe, well, you people listening to me now, you're like the directors. I'm SAP explaining the products to you. So they will say, okay, fine. What product are you going to be giving us? They will say, okay, look, if you want to um, go with Grow, you will need to sit in the SAP S/4HANA public cloud. Public cloud, when you hear public, it means public is a lot of customers will be sitting on that same space. That's what we call a public cloud. Public means that you will have, it's just one server, but you have a lot of customers, sitting there. Just like, that's the example of what public cloud is. Then, and I'm going to say, if you guys want to have some privacy, you need to come into the Rise with SAP. In Rise with SAP, we have two different products for you. We have the SAP S/4HANA Private Cloud, which you have your own private server. And I think that as a large company that's also trying to grow and do this huge transformation, you should have your own private cloud server. So okay, that's fine. That's fine. So the next thing is, what is the implementation method? Well, is it grant great? So we're going to be explaining that, look, you are new to SAP, totally new to SAP. So you will most likely be going towards the greenfield approach because you have not been sitting in SAP before now. Your systems has been Sage and other systems lying here and there. But if you're coming, then you have to adopt the greenfield approach. So at this point, you see you say, okay, somebody will now, what's the difference between grow and rise? Well, as an SAP person, I would say grow is used for small to medium, large, rise is for large, so that's the flow. We're having the conversations and the business is asking questions. As a BA too, you're expected to also ask questions if you have any questions. Of course, the question will be more around implementation. Yeah, so for implementation, yeah, if you have questions, don't forget to drop your questions on the chat. But if you please draw my attention if you need me to, if you think you have lost me. Are you guys there? Let me be sure.
Yeah. Please, the slide before the implementation, I just want to screenshot. Then you can continue. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one or this
Yeah.
one? You will get this anyways. Okay. Yeah. So the next thing is implementation. Yeah, if you look at implementation, basically, so we have the SAP team has explained to us the different products, what would be good for us, the different deployment approach, the different enablement package, the different, everything we have in SAP. So our mind, where as you guys who are the directors, you are beginning to go towards the SAP S/4HANA Private Cloud Edition. So you guys are taking notes. I might even ask you after this class which you think you want to do. Now, somebody now asks, okay, how are we going to implement this, right? Okay, let's assume we are going for the private cloud. What will be the implementation approach? how are we going to be? Maybe the project manager is asking this question because he needs to come up with a project plan and he needs to know how this will be implemented. Now, for implementation options, remember, one, we have deployment options, which is on-premise, cloud. In cloud, we have private and public. What we're looking at now is implementation options. For implementation options, we have three options to implement SAP. One is called the, the brownfield approach. Two is called the greenfield approach. And three is called the hybrid or bluefield approach. So as a BA, you need to understand this approach because this approach will drive how we're going to implement the system. So you see that when you talk about IT project, it's far, far more than just, you sign, everybody jump into and start. No, 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 no. There's a structured way we implement projects in the IT environment. So I'm taking you through that journey and making sure that you understand so that you can explain and you can internalize these things. So we're still having the conversation the remember, this is a meeting between SAP and the business. So we're looking at, okay, for you to implement, the project manager asks, we need to determine what our implementation options. So for brownfield projects, like I've said, brownfield projects are, so let's say it is brownfield, they are for new projects. So new means that this company, FlexCube, have never been on SAP before. So it's completely new system to them. So once it's completely new, what we have, is a greenfield project. So we have greenfield projects. Brownfield project is when they have been on, so I would say ex SAP users. So if they were using a version of SAP, for example, they were using SAP Business One, they were using SAP by Design, they were using an SAP project before now, and they want to move, or SAP ECC, and they want to move from that ECC to S4, which is the new version we want to adopt in FlexTube. That is what we call a brownfield project. So brownfield implementation options allow system conversions on premise and of course have cloud versions. So what it means is that for brownfield projects, since you were already existing in an SAP platform and you're moving from one SAP platform to another, you can still be on your on premise. You can do it on premise for you. We can also do it on cloud for you. If you're doing greenfield projects, of course, greenfield is totally new. You are new to SAP, so we're going to be moving you to the private cloud edition. We can also do on premise for you, but what this means is that greenfield means that this was an entirely new exposure for the business to SAP, and of course, FlexTube have now seen that they will be having a greenfield project. Then the last is selective transition, is when you pick, so SAP has different modules or different products. So you can pick products selectively. So you can decide to do finance now, and in the next 2 years pick supply chain. You can just be picking things, in a hybrid form. So that's what we call selective data transition. Yeah, so these are the three implementation options we have. So at this point, of course, for FlexTube, which is our business case, we are going to be adopting the greenfield approach. To see how the story is moving now as we're beginning to explain this. So first of all, we have decided that our deployment option will be SAP S/4HANA Private Cloud. Secondly, we have decided that that private cloud is under the RISE with SAP platform. Thirdly, we have decided that the implementation option we're going to be using will be greenfield. Please note down these facts, these points, because I need to see them when you start developing your project plan. Of course, which approach would be recommended for a government parastatal and why? Of course, so for large companies and for government parastatals, they will most likely go for the RISE with SAP, and other options. I don't want to bore you with that now. Now, let's look at explaining some of these implementations on greenfield. When you hear green, it denotes a clean slate. Yeah, so it's a fresh start with SAP on the greenfield site. So that's what greenfield is. Greenfield means this is a clean implementation. The client has never used SAP before, so everybody we're starting afresh with the greenfield. And when you're starting afresh with the greenfield, you're going to be adopting a lot of the SAP's approach, what we call best practice. SAP has a way we implement projects. So you're going to be adopting that approach, to deploy your own project. So that's basically the summary of what Greenfield is. Brownfield is converting from an existing SAP ERP to SAP S/4HANA. That's Brownfield. So you're moving from a version of SAP to what we call an upgrade. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we are hearing, but we lost you for a moment, for just a
I hear
few
you now,
seconds.
but we lost it for 1 second.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So brownfield strategy involves converting an existing SAP ERP system to SAP S/4HANA. So when you say you've been in a brownfield project, it meant that it was an upgrade. You were using a lower version of the system, and you're now moving into SAP. Or it could be the same version, but selective transition. Bluefield, which is what we call selective transition, is when you do a selective movement. You're not moving everything at once, but you're picking some features from here and there, and you're migrating to those features. So these are the three approach we use to implement projects in SAP S/4HANA. It's very, very important. So I want to ask, what is the difference between brownfield and bluefield? Anybody? Please unmute your mic and speak. When you hear the word
Okay. Okay.
what is the major difference?
Yeah, I can see you, for what you have
Go ahead.
explained. Brownfield is the
Yeah.
movement to an upgraded like from SAP ECC to SAP 4 HANA for S4 HANA.
Okay.
Why Bluefield is more sophisticated tools or platform
Yeah.
compared to Brownfield.
Okay. Awesome. But the major thing is when you say blue, it means selective. You need to use that word selective. So it's selective transitioning.
Okay.
What it means is that you can choose if SAP has 5 modules, instead of going live, you can choose a particular product in SAP and integrate with your already existing system. It's quite complicated, right? So you don't want to leave the system you're using, but you want to enjoy some SAP service. So you pick, let's say for example, your company, the HRO module is very poor, and you want to pick HRO from SAP. So you pick what we call the success factor module, or HCM, which is what we call it in SAP. You pick that module and you implement it. That's selective. So once you hear blue field, is what we call the selective transitioning. So these are the thanks for that. Please, if you're raising your hand, kindly mute and speak because I am in a full screen. Now, having explained what the different deployment and implementation approach is, they are very, very important for you to understand. Outside understanding generally what Agile is, every major IT project has an implementation and a deployment strategy. Now, let's look at activate methodology. Of course, we have said Activate is a method for delivering projects. Basically, Activate methodology is essentially helpful for SAP experts as they migrate to SAP S/4HANA. So it's a framework that we use to implement projects within SAP. It assists with, that structured approach in terms of deliverables, the resources, the timelines, deadlines, and every other thing you need to look at. The aim is to leverage SAP best practice and guided configurations to make the transformation to SAP S/4HANA successful and straightforward. So the aim of the methodology, like every other methodology, is to make sure that anything you're deploying in SAP, you follow the best practice, you follow the the ways of working within SAP so that you can achieve your goals. There's what we call best practice, and there's what we call guided configurations. So you need to follow these two very important process when you want to set up. Of course, it will also affect the way you draft your project plan. It will affect the way you deploy projects within SAP. So we have the three pillars of the Activate methodology. We have best practice, guided configuration, and of course, the Activate methodology. So these are very, very guided configuration, the methodology, and best practice. These are what we call the three pillars of our project management framework in SAP S/4HANA. You need to note that down also. So it is with these pillars. So if you have deployed projects in SAP before, these pillars are always on your mind. This is what guides. So when you see massive SAP projects being deployed, what guides the way we deploy projects is these three pillars, or are these three pillars. So let's look at them. Best practice, basically. So what is best practice? When you hear the word best practice, it just means this is how we do our things. Follow it. So best practice talks about you know, tools that you can access to do your job, to deploy projects within the SAP environment. So tools you have, SAP will provide you with standard business processes. It's one of the tools, rules and responsibilities, test scripts, all these are to make sure that you have some kind of help to make sure that you are guided in the way you implement projects in SAP. So that's why in our methodology, if you're going to be implementing project within SAP, you have to follow the best practice, the best way of doing things. Right. So let me see. So if you look, this is what we call SAP for me. This is like a product. I won't be going into that because we don't have all the time for that. But I will share this. There's a link here that I can share. When you have the time, you can check it out. But you can only access it if you have an S number with SAP or go to a consultant. But what this looks like is a screen. And in this screen, you have assist. So this is where you go. So SAP, when you want to implement project in SAP, SAP wants it to be structured. It wants it to be professional. It wants people to be guided because it's a multinational system. So it wants everybody to have a unified approach. So for you to have a unified approach, you need to have a system that has the key things, tools. So for example, if I want to do a business process flow in SAP for finance related activities, if I'm in Nigeria, the process flow should be the same than also the person implementing in Germany. So that unified structure, you can find that in what we call best practice. So best practice is just a collection of tools and processes that SAP has said, if you want to implement projects in this environment, follow these processes, follow these tools. So you can find them in a platform we call SAP for me. Because of want of time, I might not be going deep into that. The next is guided configuration. When you hear the word configuration, it means that um, you should So think of guided configuration as a set of tools for an assisted implementation for everything from initial implementation to go live. So what guided configuration basically talks about is if you're, and this is for functional consultant, so what it means is if you're going to be configuring the system, make sure you adopt best practice in configuring. One of the best practices, use SAP's support. For example, if I want to configure a company code or a company structure, SAP already has a format in the system you can adopt. SAP is saying adopt that format. Don't go and start from scratch. If you start from scratch and you don't have the technical know-how, you might have issues. So that's what we call guided configuration. It's also like best practices, saying that for you to configure, follow already established processes in the system. Follow those cases. So meaning that guided configuration lets you apply updates and changes to your configuration and stay continuously on the innovation track and adapt agilely without disruptions. Being guided by business process is what empowers the business and IT to work together. So what he's saying is that SAP provides with standard configurations that can be used to run a business process. Follow them. That's the essence of guided configuration. SAP will give you what you need to configure the system and drive the system. Follow those guidelines, follow those processes. So as a BA, what's my role here? My role here is to understand what is the best practice, because when the project manager starts doing the project plan and when you start engaging with stakeholders, you're going to hear a lot of practices. You're going to hear people say, oh, we want it to be done like this. You're going to hear people say, oh, we want it to be done like this. Their points are valid. However, if we're going to be implementing projects in SAP, there is a way, there's a best practice. So most of when you have conversations as BA and with stakeholder, what you'll be hearing is this is not best practice. This is not guided configuration. What is the best practice? So you need to be asking, and that's why you need to know as a BA. You need to understand systems. It's very, very, if not, stakeholders and users and key users and business will just be pushing you like wind up and down. So you need to understand what is the best practice, what are the guided configuration, what is the project management methodology. You need to understand these things because they will empower you to have meaningful conversations with the stakeholders. When they try to go off course, you bring them back using that, oh, look, this is not best practice. It might break the system. It won't help us achieve our aim. We might incur extra cost if you're going outside the scope. But before you can give such advices, you need to also understand what best practice is and what guided configurations are. Then the last is SAP method, the real methodology. So remember, these are the three pillars. If you're coming, of course, if you're deploying project within the SAP space, you see these things I've just shared with you now, they are very, very important. Please take your time to go through with these conversations. They are key to your conversation because there's a 90% chance in interviews that these conversations will come up. Number one, deployment approach. Number two, implementation approach. Number three, the pillars. You need to understand these terminologies. You need to understand as a BA why you need to understand best practice, why you need to make sure that users and business adopt best practice, and what project implementation, what methodology did you use to drive your project. So this has taken us back to what we call the in SAP S4HANA, we have a project methodology, like I've said, it's called Activate. And Activate has 6 steps. One is called the discovery phase. The second is called the prepare phase. The fourth is called the explore phase. The five called fourth explore, five deploy, and six run. These are the 6 phases we go through end to end. So if you say you've been in a project, in an SAP project end to end, it means you were there from the discovery phase down to the run phase. And what we did initially in this class is linked to the discovery and towards the prepare phase. All those documentations we did, all those things we prepared are pre-project documents that led to the sign-off of the project charter. And of course, that will lead to us engaging SAP to drive this project. So the thing that would now, so project charter empowers the project manager to start. The project manager has started, he has engaged SAP. The other thing that will now give him the power to begin the project is the contract. So once the contract is signed with SAP, SAP will now launch us to what we call the discovery phase. So you see how it moves? It moved from the pre-project phase. We signed the project charter. Once you also, the project charter empowered the project manager to start having discussions with SAP. We have had discussions with SAP. The next thing that will follow is a contract. Once the contract is signed off, we will now formally engage SAP. And when we engage SAP, the first phase we're going to be starting with is the discovery phase. Is this very well understood?
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes, it
Thank
is.
you.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's the flow. So that when you're having conversations, you have to flow like that. That line. You have to always connect the lines. Then the question is, how do we now work with this methodology and apply it to FlexTube? That's the crux of the matter. Since we know the methodology we're using, how will all this whole thing fit? So this is a sample of the core activities that happen in each of these phases. So in the discovery phase, once that conversation has happened, now, of course, we're in the discovery phase already because we have started having conversations with SAP because the projects that have been signed, project manager has been engaged, and BA, we're having conversations with SAP. SAP will do what we call, they will send us a cloud trial. So that trial is like a demo system that we'll play around with. Oh, okay. So those skeptical stakeholders, remember that the people who will be playing around with these systems are the users or the team that the project manager has already formed. You see why everything has to follow that sequence. So the project manager has identified the teams that will be involved. So once we're having conversations with SAP, and SAP will ask for a cloud trial. Okay, let's give us a trial system. Let's play around with it. Let's understand it. Let's know how the system feels. Let's have a look and feel of the system. SAP will say, okay, we're going to send you a cloud trial. When the cloud trial comes, the project manager and the BA will assign accesses to the identified team members who will be involved in this process. Maybe the CFO, of course, at this point is still high level, and those who can influence the directors who are still skeptical, because the feedback after that cloud trial will be, oh, the system is good, I think it can do the job, blah 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 blah. So SAP would, in the discovery phase, will start doing strategic planning, what we call the discovery assessment, and application value and scoping, and cloud mindset. These are all structures that SAP will use to also make sure that you are ready. So SAP, you're not just trying to know whether SAP can do the job. SAP is also trying to assess you to know if you are ready for the project. That's why SAP is on another level. So SAP will do what we call discovery assessment. They will ask you questions about your business, about where you are, your current state, all those. Of course, they will get, if they can, they will get a copy from the BA, they will get a copy of the business case. So that's why you need to have these things documented. So when they have a business case and they have the needs assessment, they will put that the stress assessment is like a tool. So they will fill in out some basic questions that they have gotten from those feedbacks, and they'll run an assessment. The assessment will say readiness in terms of infrastructure, people, the mindsets. They will even do what we call a cloud mindset assessment. Since you guys have been working a lot in the on premise means you have been doing things locally, right? You're not sitting in the cloud. Everybody has to come to the office to do their work. They need to assess whether whether you're open to the cloud mindset. So before SAP even accepts to have you as a customer, as you're assessing them, they're also assessing you. And part of the goal of the assessment is to advise you on what you need to put in place for you to be successful to implement SAP. So the feedback of that assessment will be, oh, look, we think you need to upgrade this, get this, remove this, add this, bring more people here, security-wise, this, that. Then it is when you have fulfilled all those requirements that the discovery assessment has pinpointed, that you can now start looking at signing a contract and moving to the next phase. So really, this is how it happens. I've been opportune to be in all the phases, and it's very, very interesting. If you see a discovery assessment of SAP, very in detailed, to let you know that, look, this place has a gap. You need to get, for you to run this, you need to have especially the IT infrastructure and security. They take that personal, because they don't want to give people their access to their systems and you now hack into their systems and steal no, they're also very careful about the customer. Even before you can run SAP, there are requirements you need to meet. So it's not just about it's not just about, they're not begging you to use their system. They want you to maximize the system. So they are also assessing you as you're also assessing them. So that's the idea around what the discovery phase is. The prepare phase is, now we have contract has been signed. Let's now settle down and do the job. That's where the project plan sits. So you have project initiation activities, governance, standards, system provisioning, fit to standard system preparation. A lot of activities happen in this phase. Then when we are done with the prepare phase, we'll move to the explore phase, which is where we're now doing fit to standard workshop. We're identifying the gaps that are in the assist and to be. So, of course, we'll assess the Sage and other systems that we're using. We'll do requirements gathering. We'll do traceability metrics. We're going to identify the gaps, find how to close those gaps. We're going to have a system provisioning. So we'll have what we call the dev system should be set up for users to start, finding their way around. We're going to have data migrations, testing, of course, no, not data migration, probably gathering requirements for data cleaning. All these activities will happen in this phase. Then we move to the realize phase. Realize phase is more of configurations, testing, environment support, process solution walkthrough, configuration documentation, test preparation, data migration, test execution, cutover preparation. So these are all activities that will be happening in the realize phase. Then we have deploy. Deploy is to now go live. Then, of course, post-production support, post-go live support, cutover closure, and of course, we have run. Run is now people have started using it. We're looking for feedbacks, and we have post-go live support. So, guys, this is how when you say end to end, this is a methodology we use to drive projects in SAP. So if we're going to implement this project and start up with a project plan, we need to fit our project plan into this structure. So I have taken my time to explain all these phases. Yeah. So you can see in the discovery phase, your customer becomes familiar with the benefits of SAP S/4HANA. That happens in the discovery phase. In the prepare phase, initial planning and preparation. In the explore phase, perform a fit to gap analysis so you have gathered requirements, understand the assist and be. We're going to see all that basically. Identify gaps and configuration values. Then in the realize phase, we're going to build and test. Then the next phase is to deploy and run. So these are summary, the key phases we're going to be going through to deploy a project in SAP S/4HANA. This is also a kind of a high level assessment of view of what happens in this phase. We have looked at this before. So I have a question here before we now go to the project planning, and I'll show you how we are going to be running through this. And for you to do project planning, I also give you also need to have access to this activate methodology to know exactly what activities happen in those phases. Now, the question is, how does the 6 phases or these steps help the consultant deliver, or the BA deliver SAP projects? Like, how do you think this will help the BA? Understanding these phases, how do you think it will support the BA's work, in terms of, helping out with the, helping out with the project overall? Why do you think the BA needs to understand this methodology? If you can unmute and speak. Why do you think this is very important? Anyone? You guys there?
Yeah, let me try.
Yes, please go ahead. Try is the most important thing.
Yeah. So, like for what we have seen so far from all the slides that have been presented, look, this all these 6 steps, they really give the project manager or the BA a detailed step-by-step um how will I put it, how to go about what they have to do step by step. And if this is done and clearly everything is well documented and they see what they need to do and follow the step-by-step process, definitely it gives them a better view of whether they are in line or out of they're out of scope of what is supposed to be done. Yeah, so it gives them a detailed overview of what they need to do and how they need to take it step by step as the project proceeds.
Awesome. Thank you. And that talks a lot around the scope. Scoping is very, very important, because if the project manager, anybody wants to say anything else? Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, the
Who
boss.
else?
Yeah, I just was saying,
Go
part
ahead,
of
please.
also it gives them the process flow, and then also just as you mentioned, the best practice. So for SAP, so I think the BA has to just follow it in line with SAP's best practice.
Yeah, best practice. Yeah, that's also a good point. Let
me
But
try.
go ahead.
Yeah, to me, all the phases are important. But if I had to choose, I would say maybe the explore phase is the most critical.
Okay.
I don't know. In that phase, it sets the foundation for the entire project, and it's essential in gathering, will I say, accurate business requirements and to really define the scope correctly.
Yeah.
If this phase is not done correctly, I don't know, it can lead to delay and scope overruns and all that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my
I think one
opinion.
of the thank you very much. I think one of the most difficult work for the project manager is to define this, because remember, when you're defining a project plan, you don't have any clarity yet. So they just give you somebody just gave you a task to do. You're supposed to break down that task. If you don't understand, the task, and you don't have experience in implementing projects, you might just do rubbish. Forget my word. You might under plan. You might give a scope that you might do a project plan that does not meet up, that will not achieve the goal. You might do a project plan that is way outside the scope. So it's very important that the project manager understands those 4 important project constraints. And as he's preparing his project plan, he has those constraints at his back of your mind. But this gives a very good structure, like somebody says, you need a structure to define what you're defining. And it's very important that this structure helps you to give clarity to the scope. So when you have defined this, you can see that every phase has some activities that is happening, and those activities will have timelines, and those timelines will have resources, and those resources will have would determine the quality of the job, and the everything put together would achieve the project timeline. And so scoping is a major activity that has to happen with the support of the BA, and you can only scope when you understand the methodology you're going to be using and the activities that happen in these different phases. A project manager might decide to use traditional approach, he might decide to use agile, whatever approach he's using, he must break down that large project into actual tasks and assign timelines to them and resources to them to be able to really come out with a scope. And that's one important thing we're going to be doing before we end this session. So, yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, guys, for your contribution. If you have anything, please call my attention to it. Yeah, there's something very important that we would also have in mind, which is what we call the golden rule, which basically helps I hope you can see my screen, yes, which helps everybody stay in line with best practice. So these are what we call golden rules for implementing SAP S/4HANA with the cloud mindset. So basically, the golden rule says that adhere to fit to standard. What it means is you adhere to best practice. Follow the activate methodology. Don't go, and if you're implementing our project, don't go and bring traditional or agile. Follow the activate methodology that we have set out, because we feel we have, we feel that we have tested it, we trust it, and we know it will deliver value to you. The second golden rule says maximize too much configurations, like what we call pre-configured solutions. Use all the available tools you have in SAP. Use the best practice. So what I would say again is it's also a very important golden rule. Don't go outside of the system if you don't need to. As much as possible, maximize the resource and follow the best practice that has been defined. The third rule says use modern integrations. So SAP can integrate with other platforms. We uses APIs and what we call the business technology platforms. So if you're going to be integrating with SAP, make sure you are using you're using modern technologies, not outdated technologies, because it can affect your security and affect the quality of your integration. Number 4, use modern extensions. Extension is also tied to integrations. Extensions help systems to actually communicate and programs to communicate with each other. Then number 4, be transparent on deviations. If the projects have deviations from the plan, you need to be clear about those deviations. And also in SAP, we also have what we call the ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. It's like a project management framework that is used to implement projects. So the 5 golden rules says follow these rules and you'll be fine when implementing projects within SAP. But now this is where we're going to wrap. We're going to now move to the project plan. These are just details around what happens in each phases. So discovery phase, like we have seen, is just a sum. What we have here is a summary. This is like what we have here is a summary of what happens in each phase. This is like the write-up, basically, a whole lot of stuff. So what I'm going to do, I will share these documents with you for your assignment also. Please go through, read through these documents. Just, I think it's a one page, it's a not a one page, but it's one document standalone. So I'm going to share it with you. Go through what happens in each of these phases. It's the same thing. If you can follow this link, click on them, find your way around, you'll be okay, right? But what we'll do now is, how do we bring in this phase, this whole phase now? How do we implement it? How do we support the project manager in implementing this phase to come up with a project plan for our Flex 2 project? That's the challenge. Since we have identified the methodology we are going to be using, we have seen how to break down, we have seen the structure to follow. How do we do that? So this is what we are going to be doing next. So we'll move back to our previous slide. And that is what we will be looking at, which is project plan. Yes, so this is where we're going to be. So I just had to go there to explain what the methodology is. So I will rely on you to go through when you are free, go through with everything about the methodology, then do a project plan. So basically, a project plan is a formal approved document used to guide both the project execution and project control. The primary, sorry, the primary uses or use of a project plan, are to document planning assumptions and decisions, facilitate communication among project stakeholders, document approved scope, cost, and schedule baselines. Now, how do we use the project management activate methodology to design a project plan for FlexTube? So we have different options. So you can use Excel, but let me just show, for the want of time, and I also share this, I don't think I'll share this document with you. Will I? Okay. Let me show you what it will look like. Okay, let me design one. I won't share it with you. I will use that as a baseline to check your work. Let me start afresh. But before I start afresh, let me show you something of what it looks like. So let's say a sample project plan. So this is sample project plan. That should be coming up soon. Can you see my screen? This thing did
No,
not
we
come
can't.
out.
We're just seeing your homepage.
You can't see. You
We're
can't see
seeing
my
only
screen,
your
right?
home,
Yeah, it's
only your homepage.
your homepage. You are seeing homepage.
Okay, let me. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Awesome. Awesome. So this is a sample of a project plan. I think I got this from Excel, so you can see. That's why I don't like it. It's not view enough. Let me close this and get something. But we'll design something from scratch so that you can see. It's also another one. Okay, let me use this price. I didn't open. Okay, let's see. Okay, let me. Okay, let's start. So basically, we'll do, there are so many examples. For example, if you look at my slide, I have an example here. that will show you, but let's just start. So project plan. Then we have the next, I'll do this in the next few minutes, then we do our quiz, we call it again. Can you guys see my screen and my Excel sheet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So let's move. I'm going to pick the 5, 6. The first thing I'm going to do, of course, project plan for FlexTube. For those who know how to use, there are tools like Microsoft Project, a lot of other project, Primavera. Most times I use Microsoft Project, but you can also use Excel. So this is a project plan. I'm going to have the first thing I'll pick are the 6 phases. But before the phase, I'm going to say phase. Phase. I'm going to have duration. I'm going to have start. I'm going to have end. Resource. What again now? Let me see. Okay, if I remember, I'll add. Let me use this simple stuff to show you. So I have this very, very important. All right. Now I'm going to pick the 6 phases. So I'm going to go back to this guy. Discover, prepare, explore, realize. So discover, prepare, explore, realize, deploy, and run. So these are the 6 phases. I need to open, I need to also reference my project, my business case. All right, so I need to reference this. I would have picked business case from, there's one that has all the departments. Okay, I think I'll just pick from here. Now, so discovery phase, if you read, you will see what the discovery phase is for. So that's why I said the key activities are happening in the discovery phase. So in my own discovery phase, I may have cloud, cloud assessment, have first things first, appointment, project manager, team, project manager, then next thing will be assessment. Let me say meeting with SAP team. So let me say SAP. No, I mean more action word. SAP system solution overview. Remember, is I'm picking this from the business case. Then, okay, after the overview, we have, so I'll go to this guy, cloud trial, discovery assessment, SAP cloud trial. Discovery assessments. Then I need to now think. Discovery assessment, what happens next? Contract sign off. Review. Stakeholder review. And review. Let me just use that. Contract sign off. Start next phase. Okay, so for the plan, so this is the phase. So you make this bold with some every phase. Duration, problem and area will take 14 days. Solutioning we hope to take 5 days. Cloud trial 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 14 days. Let's say 8 days. Discovery assessment will take let's say 10 days. Thorough review 3 days. Sign off 1 day. 1 day. And we hope to start this project on the we hope to start this phase on the when did we start this class now? Okay, let's say 30th 11 2024. Let me see if this will give me the computation I need. Yeah, so this will end on the 8th of December 2024. So if I push this, formula down, let me see. There's a formula sometimes that goes, so this is, no. So if I put here, this starts, this will be this will be equal to this. Then this is this. Then if I drag this, awesome. So the resource that will be needed here is for this whole activity, for discovery phase. Might not be for any specific thing, but for this whole phase, I'll be needing the project sponsor, I'll be needing the project manager for this core activity, needing the BA, managers, and IT. Okay, so the next phase is a prepare phase. So you already have an idea of what can happen in the prepare phase. So if I check my project plan, you see some of the, but you can't copy exactly this because it won't make sense. So you need to understand first what is the prepare phase. And so like I said, I'm going to share the details with you. So if I read, for example, the prepare phase. So you need to read first. Please go through first before you start. If not, you just give me something that does not make sense. So you see, as the name suggests, the prepare phase is crucial to both the customers and partners. The system is provisioned to the customer post signing the contract with SAP and partners. So one thing that will happen here is system provisioning. So most look like a demo system. Stakeholder. So I also have team structure. This one is not anywhere. Sign off. Same structure definition. We're going to have plan for stakeholder. Plan for stakeholder communication. Not even plan. Design. Stakeholder communication plan. So if I go again, sorry. So if you read, it will give you some stuff. Only key resource identified. So we have identified the team. And followed on from the customer side, business process owners identified to provide requirements. So most likely I'm going to be preparing for requirement gathering. These things I'm writing are not in this thing. So it's not just about copying that thing. You need to make sure it aligns. Plan for requirement gathering. So there will be a lot of plan for data migration and so on and so forth. So you have to assign timelines to these guys and continue as you go. Let me save this in case anyone wants this. Remember, anything you're doing should align with the amount of, if you're going to be deploying this project for 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, you should make sure the timeline fits with your business case. Where will I put this now? Okay. Put it somewhere here too. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Are you guys there?
Well, we are here. No question for me.
Okay, go ahead, Ike.
Okay, so
if you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out. But this, how is this different from?
You said?
Different from. How is this activates?
How is it different from traditional approach?
Yes. How is it different from traditional approach? That's what I just want to know.
That's a good question. So that we're saying agile does not mean we won't have a structure, but the difference is that you see, we're not going to finish one first before we go to the other one. So, but first things first, we need to have a structure. The difference is when we are implementing with SAP, we're going to adopt an agile approach in the way we're going to be delivering this project. So we must not deliver this one first before we move here. No. The idea is that in the agile structure, we're going to be using iterations. So what does it mean? It means that we're going to be prioritizing requirements based on their impact. Remember, one of the things Agile preaches is to deliver software quickly and create value quickly. So if we, for example, we can be in the cloud trial and discovery, we can be in the discovery phase and be planning preparation and be doing some activities for preparation. Do you understand? It will be based on priority. So if we think that communication planning and team structure, um, we prioritize this as very high, we can be working on this as well as having these conversations. So the idea of Agile is we are not going to be finishing one phase first. No, before moving, no. We were going to be prioritizing in every phase what is important to us and picking things that can help us deliver value quickly to the stakeholders so that they can start seeing the impact of what we're doing. That's the difference. But it doesn't mean we won't have a structure of how we're supposed to move. It's just that that structure is open and very flexible. And we can always, if, for example, if we're defining this structure and a month or two happens and there's a step we missed here, we are open to add more to this. We're open to accept that change, analyze the change. If the change has a lot of impact, we adopt it into our backlogs and prioritize it and run it. So agile is so this is but the essence is we need to have a structure, but the structure is not traditional. The structure is very open and very agile, and we're going to be prioritizing things. We are not going to be finishing. We're not, for example, like I've said, if requirement planning for requirements and planning for data migration are key issues that will take a lot of time, we can start now early while we are still having conversations with SAP on how to do discovery assessment. Do you understand the difference?
Okay, I get.
Yeah. So the thing is, we are agile in the sense that we can, when we define these things, we now have to prioritize them, pick, do some retrospection, put them in backlogs, and deal with the things that are more important and start dealing with them early so that they don't impact negatively on the time frame. And when you deal with things early and you prioritize things, you are able to deliver your program quicker and create value quicker. That's just the aspect of agile, and you're also open to additions or to changes. So of course, there'll be some impactment and there'll be some impact assessment done and all that. But that's basically the difference. But as per structure, yes, you need to have a structure, but that structure is not fixed. It is open. That's a very good question. Please ask questions as much as possible. I believe this is also new. Let me check my chat if I have anything. Okay, no question. Oh yeah. Osaro, I guess I add you after. Sorry guys, I didn't see that quickly. So any questions? Are you going to have any questions with the task also? How are you going to? So how with this? So you can see that I'm picking if you want to do a project plan for FlexTube, you need to put these things side by side. First of all, understand the current process, the current issues that FlexTube has. Understand the project management methodology you're going to be using, and break down so you can see that if I'm if I'm done with the kickoff and sign off, I can start picking things from here. Like I said, it's based on prioritization. And by the time I finish all this in explore phase, I can, if I read, I can, check the explore phase. Explore phase is we're going to be doing more of implementation of what you have pointed out. So if we check explore phase, for example, let me check explore phase. So this can also guide you So explore phase here, we have fit to standard workshops. So the ideal is that once we have planned everything we want to plan, do a lot of the planning, explore is execution. So for example, if we have planned for requirement gathering in planning phase, in the explore phase, we need to now do the requirement gathering, get the fit to standard workshop, do a fit to standard workshop, identify the deltas and the gaps. All that will be picking up as we move. So once we're done with the project plan, we'll come back to these guys. We'll come back to these core activities, especially from the um, planning phase. Some of the things we're going to be doing is we've already done the communication plan. We'll pick up requirements gathering. So in our next class, we'll start picking up things from the project plan. So in our next class, the major thing we're going to do is now we have a plan. We have a project plan. We have structured the project plan. We have said in the project plan, we need to plan for requirement gathering. When the day for requirement gathering come, what do we do? So we'll start picking up key activities within the project plan and executing them. So what we hope to do next week is one of the most, so we have assisted, remember, the project planning is not the core responsibility of the BA, but you need to understand what happens there. You need to be part of it. You need to understand it. You need to understand which implementation methodology we're using. You need to understand how the project is planned and the timelines and the resources, because you will be communicating with those resources also. You need to also be in the shoes of the project manager to be able to appreciate the effort he's putting and all that. You'll be involved. Now that the project plan has been, so hopefully next week when you have your project plan, we'll look at them, see which is visible, and start picking core activities in the plan. Once you have finished your planning phase, the next phase is, for example, we have one plan here is data migration. We need to look at what is data migration. We've seen plan for integration. What is integration? We need to now know what those things are. One of the things that we'll learn next week, which is very important, is requirement gathering. Now you are finished planning, you now have to go and get the data from the stakeholders. That's the core job of the BA. So as a BA, this is your number one, not really number one, but this is a major responsibility. How do you get the information based on the project plan? Because the project plan will say requirement gathering is for 2 weeks. BA, in 2 weeks, you're supposed to gather all the requirements. The question is how? Where do you start from? Where did you go? What do you do? How do you start? What approach do you use? We say we'll do, at least you have done a communication plan, risk management plan. There are a lot of plans. How do you do those things? That's what we're going to be looking at in the coming weeks. But next week, please don't miss it. Next week is requirement gathering. When you gather requirements, how do you do process mapping? How do you gather it? How do you map it? How do you prioritize it? What kind of requirements are you supposed to be gathering? These are questions that are very important that BAs will do. So please, let me send out let's take this time to do a quiz, then we'll summarize within the next few minutes. But please take your time to do the assignments. I'm going to summarize the assignments. One of them is to come up with a team structure. The second is to read very thoroughly the implementation approach. Third is to come up with a project plan for FlexTube using the examples I have shown. Yes, so let's do the quiz for today. I'm going to share as usual, share it in the chat. This quiz is for 3 minutes. Please use your time well. for 3 minutes is shorter than the ones you used to. You guys are getting mature, so the time is reducing. So I'm sharing it in
I'm just,
the.
we are getting mature. The time is reducing.
Yes, I can't be spoon feeding you people like that again.
Okay.
So 3 minutes. I did the exam last week. I knew what I had to go through to finish on time. So I need to start giving people goals to be trained. So the link has been shared. If you want me to share the the scan, you can scan this. So please open the link. Once you click, the time starts reading. Fill your name. First name is okay. I don't need your full name. First name, then finish the questions and let me know. Thank you. Please, when you finish, make sure you drop in the chat that you are done. 3